color and all this fun stuff. And then if you happen to have a vacant building, then there's these provisions that need to happen. If you happen to be somebody that owns a bunch of building and somebody else is renting from you, then there's safety and protection standards in there. It can have more teeth and that type of thing. So it's essentially a triage system, which I think bodes really well for South Dundas. It's the intent is protection and care without people feeling like their rights are being taken away. And yet I think you can branch off and give it some teeth to deal with those headaches. So I like this discussion. It's good.
Okay, any further?
I just say, I don't want to see the signs where you see government back off, now you have our logo back off on their fence posts. Yeah. So,
Well, yeah, I think, as I said, I think we got to balance it out. I think trying to jam it all into one bylaw, you're asking for trouble. I think separating it out where you really want to be specific, then I think it'll be more manageable, that's for sure.
Good
So
discussion.
anything else on this?
no,
Okay, you have enough information to come back to council and go from there? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a good discussion.
Okay, so before going on to the next one, does council need a break? 5-minute break? Okay, welcome back. Moving on to key information report on the sign bylaw and zoning provisions. So Nicole again.
Just gotta find my mute button. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So before you, we have a report outlining general provisions for the zoning bylaw for signs. So we currently have a municipal-wide sign bylaw that affects signs on municipal properties. Sorry. So I've gone through with our sign bylaw and updated it kind of to outline definitions and how signs on private property would be affected. So designated structure signs similar to the one on County Road 2 would now be classified under that sign bylaw. It wouldn't be applicable because it's not on municipal property, but it would require to meet the zoning provisions that we bring forward. So any zoning provisions will have to go through a public process, but under discussion, we have the outline of ideas we're proposing. So those large type signs are only permitted on certain properties, not with a home-based business. And we're also proposing to include outdoor illumination in the zoning bylaw, similar to what the county's sign bylaw introduces as well. If you have any questions, Aaron and I could both answer those at any time.
Okay, we have Mayor Gardner.
When the streetscape is done, and it's beautifully, it looks beautiful. Those temporary signs that we seem to have a lot of all over the place. Is there any way to put something in here? I didn't see it, but doesn't mean it's not in here, where you can only have one sign and then you can't have another within so many, like a distance of it. So if somebody, I mean, when you're running events and stuff, those portable signs are really helpful. However, I find it sign pollution when you've got 4 or 5 of them in a row. I'd really like to see it where if one portable sign is up, then there's not another one within a certain distance or something like that. Like I don't know if that's been thought of or.
Yeah, so under our current municipal bylaw, I believe it's 60 meters on the green space in front of the plazas, so in Iroquois and in Morrisburg.
Okay.
Obviously, if you drive down there today, it's kind of blown up, so we have to definitely address it, and we've kind of been in contact with some of the business owners who have those signs to deal with those.
Yeah, and I'm not trying. Yeah. I'm not trying to limit business, but when you have 4 or 5 of them, nobody's paying attention to them anyway, and they just look somewhat unsightly. And we are going to have a fairly wide sidewalk there, so I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, the one thing that I do want to update is there's an exemption for the small type signs, but if you go down the road, the new business has probably 10 of them.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to put a limit on that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty excessive in the
Yeah.
recent months.
It's a little too much. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Lewis.
No, I have no questions on this one. I was just thinking that I was going to ask you the same question that Deputy Mayor Gardner was going to ask, but she got to it first because they are sometimes very annoying. They're very untidy, as I would say, because it just seems like there's one sign on top of another sign on top of another sign. And I really don't know if we need, all you gotta do is look over there. I know there's a Subway, and I know that there's Morrisburg Plumbing or whatever. I don't know, those signs are just gaudy to me, and that's where I'll leave it.
Councilor Mellon.
When you made we reference to the sign that's in question now on number 2 highway, it would need a building permit. Is that right, Nicole?
That's correct, yeah. So any structure larger than a certain size under the building code is classified as a designated structure under Part 3 and does require a building permit. So That sign actually does need a building permit, and they're well aware of it, and we're trying to deal with that. But moving forward, we need to update our zoning bylaw for the provisions of signs in general. So we don't have anything right now for signs on private properties.
Okay, if that sign was to meet the building code, got a building permit, is there any way we could say yes or no that we don't want, that's not in the appropriate area?
Yeah, that's where the zoning bylaw comes into effect.
The building bylaw would dictate that that sign should not be there. Is that what
The
you're saying?
zoning, the
Zoning.
zoning bylaw, yeah.
The zoning bylaw, okay. Alrighty. Yeah. Under those temporary signs that Deputy Mayor Gardner, and I think that's, that's been a point that's been batted around for a while. Under that clause, if you will, or under that policy, what is the time frame for them signs to be there? Like, does somebody have squatters' rights forever if they got their sign there and nobody else can be within 60 meters or whatever you would say it
No,
was?
so right now they have a 6-month timeline for their permits, and every 6 months they have to reapply. And it can't always be the same applicant. So if another business wants to come in, they have to have the opportunity. If no one applies, then it could be the same business always, but yeah, there is a circulation clause in there that states you can't always have the same person if there's not enough room.
Okay, so you just can't be in there forever if somebody else wanted that spot.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know, I'm pretty good here, Mayor.
Councilor Wells?
My one question, Deputy Mayor Gartner, about the sign pollution. Myself, you drive down along there, it looks like a flea market with all the signage up there. Something like that I would like to see controlled. As far as, I don't know, because that's municipal land, like, say, I know the one across there at the one dealership there, now it's on county land. Like, if people pull their signs back that it's on their own land, like, we really don't have any, our sign wouldn't even pertain to what they put up, would it? As far as, let's call it a temporary sign, like, those ones over there, a lot of them aren't temporary, like, they've been there for years.
Councilor Wells, I call them temporary permanent.
Yeah, well.
That's what they're called, temporary permanent.
And like
They don't move.
myself, like I have a sign up there on industrial. I don't know if it's on counties. I know I was asked the other day by counties that came in the shop, the office there, and asked me to move it because apparently someone almost got in an accident. Like, it's been up there for 9 years. And anyways, I pulled it back, and I'm pretty sure I'm on Bob Aikman's property now. But there's something like that where it was something we would have to do. Like, I know my sign's up there, so, and I'm saying about sign pollution, but I think after a business, like if you gave a new business, like back 8 years ago when I started the rental company, you give them 4 or 5 months to do it, then it's, you have your ad on Google and everything like everyone else does. I think is good, like you put it up there and remove it. And the only other thing, I see the fees like for temporary signs and that. Now, we would have no control, I guess in municipality we would, but we would have no control, like say, for example, like Barclays, Orchards and Stonecrop and all of them, like they always on the weekends they'll put their sign up there and advertise stuff like that. There would be no fee for that, right? You just remove the sign every day? Like that would that be up to us or up to the counties type deal, like for signage
so
like
those-
that?
So those small signs that they put out on 31 there, those are considered exempt under our current sign bylaw, even if it was on municipal property because of the size. So what we want to do is so for instance, for your sign on Aikman's there, if there's a sign on a private property, we just want to put in limitations of where it can be placed and how big and how it would affect
Okay.
neighboring properties, basically. But no, we can't control those small signs basically on the side of county roads.
Okay,
I don't even think the counties do.
yeah. No, other than that, Mayor, everything was pretty straightforward in that. And I know there was been a lot of heat with us with this sign up the road here, and I think between the county's new plan and what we do, I think that'll hopefully never happen again, so.
Okay, well, the county plan relies a bit on us now. At first it didn't, the counties would,
With the building code and stuff.
well, they would have issued a permit irregardless of what actually had to happen to get the sign up, and now it's kind of reversed where if somebody wants, let's say that sign was going up tomorrow, Nicole would have to sign off and say that it meets the building code requirements, zoning requirements, and anything else in municipality that we control. So that would have, in theory, stopped it in its tracks right there. But but at that time it was reversed, where the counties just issued the sign permit based on their jurisdiction. So the counties have jurisdiction on what they own, plus 100 meters back, because you're near a county road. It's just like the old MTO, where
Yeah.
if you put a billboard up, you would have to pay them X because you're getting the benefit of the highway that they own.
Yep.
So the county bylaw has been was tightened up. The illumination, though, is strictly on traffic concerns more than anything else, whereas we need to tighten up our zoning bylaw, and I see that part of those provisions are in there, that making sure it does conform with our zoning, and we would have to update the illumination factor, and I think part of the property standards bylaw actually had something in there that your light couldn't interfere with your neighbor. So that, but those signs are gonna be more than not out there. This one's kind of, I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's certainly one of the first ones in South Dundas that has people upset. I'm thinking from a zoning point of view, technically he put up a sign for a residential property, so he really didn't have a business at that time. He still does not have a business at this time. So why does he need a sign of that sort? So, that kind of, those things have to be captured in our own kind of, either a sign bylaw or a zoning bylaw, that make sure that if somebody wants to put up those kind of signs, that they don't interfere with other people's enjoyment of their own property and whatnot. So when I look at I did write some stickies here, I have to get down to them. Okay, so right now our regulations are only for municipal property. So the only way we can deal with private property is zoning, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then we need to specify in our sign bylaw that it has to meet zoning requirements, or in the zoning bylaw. The biggest challenge with the sign that's on County Road 2 is the light and the effect that it has. And to be honest, the McDonald's light on County Road 31 right now is actually brighter, but no one complains about it. It's hard. I did, and the counties will tone it down because from a driving point of view, because it kind of just blares at you. But it's in the right place. It's a commercial area, whereas this is not a commercial area. It's a rural or it is rural in that area, but people can build homes there, and it interferes with other people's ability to enjoy their place of dwelling. If there's a home business there, then I guess we got to come up with a plan that signs make sense for home businesses. As for the sign pollution on there's in front of our plazas, I'm just going to generalize it in front of Morrisburg and Iroquois. I'm not going to. I consider it sign pollution. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason. They're just a mess. As long as I've been on council, I wish they disappeared. I've never had a council that wanted to make them disappear, because everybody thinks that they're okay, but, you know, we're gonna do the streetscape here in Morrisburg next year, and all that sign's still gonna be there. I think that's, it's just a mess. It reminds me of Maryvale Road in Ottawa, and why do we want to do it? If it's on private property, we can't really stop it. And I understand that the businesses are off the road, but people do drive by and they can see all what's in the plaza. And if the, you know, plaza has some work to do to maybe we need one sign. We do have one sign, one entrance sign that says what's there. If there's specifics, maybe they need to think of other ways of doing it. If people want to put a temporary permit on their own private property, fair enough, but it has to be on their own private property. And I know that at Mr. Aikman's property, Councillor Wells, the site triangle is a lot bigger than you think. If you go back to where Bob actually owns, which
He's
is,
got a white line there right now.
okay, which is quite a ways back
Yep.
from what he thinks. And then the site triangle is fairly large. So where your sign was on the site triangle. Tester ink signs on the white site. Though, like, that's how much, if
Yeah.
you look at
Just because of the corner.
just at the
Yeah.
corner, and that,
I'm probably still on,
yeah,
county
well,
property.
and they may let you if you get far enough back, but if there's an accident caused because somebody couldn't
Yep.
see past the sign,
Yep.
the counties are gonna be somewhat liable. So I think we need to somewhat clean them up, but I think the biggest concern about signs in South Dundas right now is the one that was built technically legally. And how do we make sure that if that happens again, that there's some method that we could at least go through a process that they can have the sign if they can meet all the requirements that make sense. To me, that sign does not make sense there. I've listened to people endlessly about it. I know that we're dealing with them, but that doesn't fix the sign. Sign's still there. Counties will not do much more about it. We'll just have to work our way through it. So Nicole, you had your hand up, so.
Yeah, it's just an option for council with the streetscape coming. Because it is municipal property, is it something that council wants to do at this time is remove signs along the plazas? Because, yeah, it is our property, and if things are changing into a more aesthetically pleasing avenue, maybe now's the time to remove that.
Yep.
In my,
allowance.
in my mind, with the wider walkway, because there's not a walkway that exists now, with the wider walkway, the fact that there's some speed limiting features, so people are going slower, that's the thought process anyway, speed calming. If you remove all the signs, then people look at the buildings instead of the sign, right? They look over and see there's a subway or, you know, whatever. So I think if we came up with a comprehensive plan, I think it would be a darn shame to go through all that construction and everything else and all the consultation, and then 2 months after streetscape's done, we have all those signs back. So I get it for events. I mean, for events, you need that opportunity to put a temporary sign, but for the businesses that have them there permanently, and especially with the windstorms and stuff that we've got, like, I don't even know how they're not a safety hazard somewhat if they can't be chained down. But I would like to see something. I think it just needs to be addressed. So I think there shouldn't be. If there's going to be green space, benches, and a nice walkway, I think it's going to look ridiculous to have then those portable signs mixed in there. So, just my thought. I'm okay to pull the Band-Aid.
Okay.
You already know that I'd like to see those signs gone, because to me they're gaudy. They're an eyesore. Like, we're in a village. We're not in Matilda landfill site. I'm sorry, but those signs just, I'm sorry, they're not my forte.
Well, I was on council when we got the sign bylaw, and it's a pretty soft bylaw, I guess, if you will, as far as the signs and allowing the signs and having them licensed for 6 months and whatever. I could live with them signs being gone. Like I said, I maybe the only thought would be for a new business that's coming into either of our malls, because we're going to have to eliminate both. If we're going to do one, we got to do both. But if we had a new business coming into either one of the malls, we give them the exemption for maybe 2-3 months to, just to advertise the business, to, draw people aware to it.
It's a good idea.
That would be, other than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I can,
That's good.
I agree with everything that's going around here. Is signage pollution or whatever you want to put it? No, it wouldn't bother me to put a bylaw saying no more signs out there, and do for someone that wants to start a business here, entertain putting a sign up, grand opening for a couple months, whatever works for them, then the sign be removed. So.
okay, so council's favors to go ahead and remove the signs off the municipal properties in front of our plazas, and both have to be addressed at the same time. You can't be fair and say Morrisburg loses them all and Iroquois gets to keep them. In fact, half of Iroquois are sometimes they're just somebody else's sign anyway, not even a business within the mall. So that's not fair either. Like they just basically put up a sign, and something to mow around. You want things to look good, and a whole assortment of temporary permanent signs that don't make any logical sense is not good. If the businesses within the plaza want to do a better sign, then perhaps they need to get together and use the current signage and maybe add to it. I like the idea of temporary permanent or temporary sign, because it wouldn't be permanent anymore for a new business, because we want to make sure that people know that they're there.
That's important. Maybe events, like would we put some clause in that if the plaza is holding an event, they could maybe put a sign up? Like, does that need to be included? Because I know I'm thinking Apple Fest in Iroquois.
Yeah, for sure.
They would want to sign up, so it should be an event
Yeah. So new openings and events.
Yep.
It's only temporary anyways, that sign.
Well, so
Yeah.
are all the other ones, supposedly.
Well, yeah, they're classified as temporary, but it's temporary permanent.
Yeah.
And I don't know, everybody says, well, you can move it. Well, it hasn't moved in 10 years, so,
Yeah.
even if you say, well, I gotta move it an inch, well, that doesn't make any sense either, so it's, and for dealing with signs on private property, how are we gonna, can you re-explain how we're gonna deal with it? And I guess, from a aesthetic point of view, a lighting point of view, and a sign that technically is in the right place for the right reason.
Yeah, so Aaron and I are going to draft a zoning bylaw amendment for sign provisions. We do have some provisions in there for home-based businesses, so that is addressed, but it doesn't address the larger signs on commercial, industrial, or institutional properties, nor does it address any signs on rural or agricultural properties. So we'll look at bringing back zoning provisions for that to address it in the future. And in the meantime, if any other sign goes up, we will address it under the building code, but that obviously takes some time to push through.
We're not here to defeat signs. Like, I know there's signs on farmsteads, there's signs on home-based buildings that are not gaudy and make sense and don't need to be regulated by us per se, except as long as the setbacks are there and everything else, they don't interfere with traffic. But the one on County Road 2, it has brought a lot of issues to the forefront, and it was unfortunate that they took the permit they obtained from the counties as a way of putting up a sign without worrying about building code or zoning. And of course, that goes along with everything else that's going on there, and I'm not going to say anything more, but you know, it's, we don't, it'd be nice to avoid the headaches now that we know what they are. Anything else on signs? Okay, then we'll move on to the draft engineering standards, and I guess this is for Shannon, right? Thanks, Nicole, and thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So as we discussed in our last committee of the whole in regards to our subdivision manual, this is something that staff have been working on with our engineer for the last couple of years, just as a guiding document that we can provide to our developers and our engineers as a minimum of what we require for infrastructure as far as sewer, water, lighting, street lights, all that stuff. So as we indicated before, when Josh was here to kind of give us an overview, we've been working with every department within South Dundas to try and get what their requirements will be for their infrastructure. It's a technical report for sure. Not something that was my forte by any means. It's something that we've actually used as a guiding document for the Swank, the Dutch Meadows subdivision. It's worked out quite well. It's nice that we can, if you have a developer that's interested in building a subdivision, that you can hand them a document and then they can at least give it to their engineer and start designing what we require rather than having 20, 30 meetings to try and get everybody coordinated together. So we're just looking for some direction from council. If this is something that council's comfortable with, that we'd like to at least bring it back in either as a policy or as a report, just to have this as a guiding document internally moving forward for our for future subdivisions.
Okay, Councillor Wells.
Yeah, like I read about 80% of it, skimmed through it. It's there is a lot of detail to it. The only thing I seen, which probably won't even be a big issue, is on 6.9 for servicing, is it states for the purpose of storm servicing to provide building foundation drainage only. The only thing which I would take this as being a French drain, meaning if the elevation of your lot allows you to have a French drain, which is a great way to get rid of water instead of going through sub pumps and that. But if you take a French drain, does it go into a ditch, or can we put it into a swale? I don't know how to define that, or how you would define a French drain. I think if it was reworded a gravity connection, what it says right here is preferred wherever possible, which means a French drain. But I don't know if we should, because we're only talking subdivisions, this doesn't apply to any rural application, like if you're building a house and someone, because my house back on Strader Hill Road, I put a French drain there right into whatever that drainage ditch was. I think
The Barringer drain, a freebie, yeah.
anyways, I have a French drain coming off that house for that. And
This would be mainly for subdivisions, to create that consistency, that uniformity, in each subdivision. I will say that this manual is minimum requirement, so if a developer wants to go above and beyond this is kind of our minimum. And we did have some discussion with Dutch Meadows on some things in here that maybe we differed on, but it's not set in stone. We'll work with the developers on making things work, but to me I think it's a good guiding document moving forward.
And like I said, I went through about 80% of it, read it, and you can go over this thing. I can read it 200 times and you're still going to miss something, just because of all the stuff in it, and a lot of people wouldn't even understand what's in it unless you were a contractor. But the servicing part, I don't know if we have to just reword it that, say, if every house could have a thing, Or you put it in that you have to have a sub pump backup, which is probably in there somewhere, I just didn't see it. But other than that, I think it's a, for a minimum thing, it's a very good point for, especially when it's come to Dutch Meadows with being such a four-phase subdivision, so we're talking 20 years down the road, like we just want to make sure when we start on the first year that we have pretty much everything covered. Are we going to add to or delete stuff over years? Probably, but I think overall it's a very good start. So,
I think there is a provision in there that if somebody objected to it and they can prove via an engineering study that their way is better, then at least that avenue is there. So
Yeah.
that adds some flexibility, I guess.
Yeah, and the main thing, like with all these big before you even get your building permits and that, it's all got to be engineered with your drainage and your calculations for stormwater and everything. So it's a lot of it's in place to start with, and this is just to clarify more stuff as they go. So other than that, Mayor, I'm pretty good.
Councilor Mellon, did you read 8% of it?
No, I read, well, when I went through it the fourth time,
Okay.
no, that's, okay, it's a lot of technical stuff that's way beyond me. I know when you said this sort of the minimum, to me, I read this and I thought, wow, it doesn't matter what subdivision size, I'm thinking like on a subdivision Dutch Meadows size, I think that this is probably more than needed. I'm thinking, I guess, if there was a smaller subdivision, if you will, I guess it's all a requirement. I guess it may be a little overwhelming because I've never seen something like this, so.
There might be things that aren't required under a smaller subdivision, but to me, the infrastructure will stay the same regardless of whether it's a large or small. You still need the right sizing for water and sewer and hydrants and street lights. You want that consistency, right? So there might be some things that alter based on it, but as the mayor indicated, if they can demonstrate something different beyond this, it's not set in stone by any means.
Yeah, okay, and I appreciate that, it's just like, I've never seen something like, do we need in there, or is it covered under another policy, to have a clear definition of the homeowner's lateral compared to the main, and compared to our main compared to the homeowner's lateral, and who's responsible for what? Like we're responsible for the main when we take it over. Yes.
Yes, Nicole, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so that's covered under the Ontario Building Code, so anything beyond the property line is all building main, so it's inspected by the building department under the building permits.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. The other thing I read in there, I saw it a couple of times, and it was sort of, the backwater valves.
Backflow?
Are they required in all the homes, in the sewer line and the storm line or whatever? They're required.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a current building code requirement as well. Backflow preventers are required to make sure there's no contamination flowing back into the municipal services.
Okay, so it protects the homeowner.
Protects our water.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And in 16 or 11.6, and maybe it's maybe in another section, as far as surveying for lots, like for the final lot grading, like we've, as for pinning the houses on the lots, because they're going to be small lots, and make sure we have minimum separation. And when they're building, if one shifted a little bit one way and the next one shifts that way, same way. Is there anything in there to make sure that we are covered? We've already went through that, I think, exercise, or yeah. So that'll be covered in there. Is that not required in the subdivision agreement, or is it?
No, so that's under our grading and drainage bylaw.
Okay.
So the subdivision agreement is more of an overall guideline for the entire subdivision as a whole. Each separate property will be required to meet the requirements under building and bylaw for the municipalities. So our grading and drainage building permits, et cetera.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. I'm good.
Louis?
No, I did not read 80%. I got to about 47% and I'm going, whoa, this is definitely out of my realm. Some of it I understood, some of it just, I guess that's why we have professionals do it. But what I understood, it makes sense to me, and I think this is a good standard policy to follow for subdivisions.
A technical document, so I skimmed through it a couple of times, but didn't get too much into the weeds. But I like where you're going with this to do the consistency and stuff. My only thing with documents like this is, will you have some sort of guidelines around when it would be updated? You know what I mean? I've seen the best procedure manuals or whatever I've ever seen. The last page actually has kind of, this will be updated or reviewed at a certain time, and it also allows for feedback for the clients that are using it. So when we go through the Dutch Meadows exercise, because it's a big subdivision, it'd be nice to have some dialogue about, was this helpful? Is there anything we missed? That type of thing.
Yeah.
I understand it's just a baseline, but it's still helpful, and it just means down the road, you don't have to think, oh, well, what was that conversation we had? So,
Actually, not a bad point at all. I think it's something we'll put in there.
Yeah.
But, I was trying to figure out when you should review it. I think it should be reviewed after every subdivision.
Yeah.
And sit down with the developer and engineers and say, what worked, what didn't work, what could we improve on?
Yeah.
And I think that's your checks and balances.
because that's the
and improving
danger
it,
with this
right?
stuff, is you really have to view it as a living document. So it does need, not something that's is set in stone, but just the intent is to review it after so many years or whatever. So, and technology will change as well,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
So,
Just be like as-built. For any project, like the contractor goes through all this and they do the completion, then we could come back and ask for as-built, say, well, this here, then we can, at the end, that's how you clarify everything, whether it's a whole subdivision
Yeah.
or a building or anything, right? And you
Yep.
just, then moving forward, next time, it just makes it a lot easier
Yep.
for another developer. Okay, this guy's been through it, just kind of tweaks everything like.
well,
as it
it's just,
goes.
I appreciate the amount of work into it and the intent with it, and I just, sometimes the intent and work gets lost if it's not just kept, whatever.
Nope.
So that's my
On
comment.
point.
I did read 80% plus. It's a challenging read, but it's very technical, and I appreciate technicalities beyond it. I was very intrigued with some of the calculations and how they got everything figured out, and using, some general calculations some engineer did many years ago. But I did reach out to Ron Swank, and he had no comment back on it that he had any issues with. But I think, reviewing it every once in a while, we do ask for as-built. I know I've been through some of the subdivision agreements with Swanks previously, and without the expertise sitting there or something to go by, I wouldn't say you're at the mercy, but they may challenge you more than they need to. So you say, this is our document. If you have issues, prove it to us that we have issues. I think generally it's okay. I don't see anything that would scare anybody away. For the most part, we're flexible enough to make things work. It still says we're responsible for snow clearing after the first lift, which was always the contentions with the Swanks. So that's good. But this is I think it's something that we can pass, and staff can use it. And as I said, if there's an issue, then they can come to council and adjust it as necessary for the subdivision that comes in. Not that we're going to have a ton of subdivisions. I think the Dutch Meadows one is the biggie, and hopefully it all works out. And who knows how it all goes down the road. But anything else from any members of council? Okay, so you can bring that to council and
Okay.
we can pass it a second time looking at it. And that brings us to the end of today. Anything further on any of the subjects we had mentioned that came to light to any member of council? Seeing none, I'll call, before we ask for adjournment, I'd like to thank council for their work today. Thank all staff, especially Nicole, for bringing all these key information reports forward to us, because it's important that we keep up to date on where we want to go. And thank the audience for participating. Ethan?
Moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Mellon, that council now adjourn to meet again at the call of the chair.
You've all heard the motion. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.